Hello again, Mr. LaBeouf here. I've entitled this video, Write Any Fraction as a Percent Easily. Let's start with a very easy one. 4/5 equals x over 100, which equals x percent. Now, at the tail end of that series of equations there, we find the all-important definition of percent. My message to students about percent is simple. Percents are easy if you remember this definition. A percent is nothing more than the numerator of a hundredths fraction. X over 100 is x percent is x over 100 for any x. We're going to use the most important concept of middle school math to answer all of these questions in this video, and that concept is equivalent fractions. If we multiply the top and bottom of the 4/5 by 20, 5 times 20 is 100, 4 times 20 is, of course, 80. So this x is 80, and so is this x over here. Many of you probably knew that from the start, that 4/5 is 80%. It's because of the concept of equivalent fractions. 80 hundredths is exactly the same point on the number line as 80%, and 80% is just another name for 80 hundredths. Let's record our result over here. 4/5 equals 80%, and let's consider a question that's a little harder. A lot of times, a natural inclination would be to think of these fractions as results on a test or a quiz. If you take a 5-question test and get one wrong with no partial credit, a lot of us realize that you're losing 20 points. You're losing 20% because 1/5 is 20%. You got 4/5 right, so that's 4 times 20% or 80%. Let's consider this slightly harder question of 5/6 equals what over 100 equals what percent. This is harder because 6 is not a factor of 100. And in every 6th grade class, there are a few or several 6th graders who can figure out pretty easily what you multiply 6 by to get 100 as a mixed number. And I'll compliment students for being able to do that. But then I'll ask all of the students to realize that there is a simple approach that will work with any fraction, and that is the number that you multiply 6 by to get 100 is 100 over 6. And since we're multiplying the 6 by 100 over 6 to get the 100, we must do the same thing in the numerator. Let's look at that a little bit before we finish the problem. 6 times 100 over 6, 600 over 6, or 100. We could come back here at this multiplication and realize we could cancel the 6's and be left with the 100 that we want. Let's look at it from the point of view of algebra. If the question is, what do I multiply 6 by to get 100? Let's write 6a equals 100 and figure out what the a is. We take the algebraic approach of doing the same thing to both sides. Divide each side by 6. The 6's cancel, and we see that a equals 100 over 6. So let's finish the problem now. At this point, when I'm teaching this skill to 6th graders, I'll usually say right now, we have the answer. This x is 5 times 100/6. 5 times 100/6 is 500/6. So the original 5/6 is equal to 500/6%. One of the nice things about this lesson is that it also illustrates the importance of being able to convert an improper fraction to a mixed number. Because what is 500/6? It's much easier to understand the value of this number 5/6 or this number 500/6 percent by converting that 506 to a mixed number. 500 divided by 6, we'll put an 8 here, 48, 2, 0 down there. 3 times 6 is 18. And a third grader would say that 500 divided by 6 is 83 remainder 2, or 83 times 6 plus 2 gives you the 500. But quotient and remainder is not really a single number. So we use the handy mixed number. Take that remainder 2, put it here over the 6. This simplifies to 83 1/3. So our final result is, we'll say that our final answer is that 5/6 is 83 1/3%. Let's record that over here. And before we move on to the next fraction, 5/6 is 83 1/3%. Before moving on, let's take a step back to the very first problem, 4/5. And we just sort of glossed over the fact that you can multiply the top and bottom here by 20 to get the 80%. But let's look at it now in terms of our new understanding. What is the number you multiply 5 by to get 100? It's 100/5. Really the same approach. The only difference is that 100/5 is 20. It's the whole number 20. And middle school students should know all the factors of 100 and know immediately that 5 times 20 is 100. But we can also see that easy problem in the same framework as the others. 5 times 100/5 will give you the 100. So now we're going to move on to a kind of a problem that I'll frequently refer to as an ugly one. A fraction whose denominator is not one we're pleased to see. But the big message of this video is that there is no such thing as an ugly fraction. No matter what that denominator is, no matter what kind of fraction you have, it's easy to convert a fraction to a percent. So let's imagine that a student takes a 17-question test or quiz and gets 2 wrong or 15 right, and the student wants to know the grade, the score. Sometimes a slightly mischievous middle school teacher will say, well, there it is. That's your score, 15/17, and that's correct. But the concept of a percent is so pervasive in our culture, not just in school, but elsewhere, that we want to know. It gives us a good understanding of how we did when we can see it as a percent. So 15/17 equals x over 100, which equals x% by the definition of percent. This time, the number that you multiply 17 by to get 100, 17a equals 100. Solving for that a, we get 100/17. So we're going to multiply the top and bottom by 100/17. And so the x, of course, each of these x's is 1500/17. So 15/17 is 1500/17%. Once again, we'll convert this to a mixed number. 8 times 17 is 136. We'll go back here for a moment. 9 times 17 is 153. A little too high, so at this point we have a little disappointment. We didn't quite reach the 90 that we might have wanted. Continuing, we get another 8 here, another 136, subtract and get 4, and our percent is exactly. This is an exact answer. All 3 of these numbers are exactly the same. 15/17 is 88 4/17%. Now, if your goal was to get a 90, I have 2 things to say. First of all, If you got 15 right out of 17, and your score is 88 and 4/17%, rounded to the nearest whole number percent, that's not even 89. It would round to 88% because this 4/17 is less than a half. But here's my strong recommendation. Pretend you took the 17 question test and got one wrong, or 16 out of 17. Convert 16/17 to a percent. I think you'll be happy with the result. Make sure it's greater than 90% because it is. Converting any fraction to a percent is extremely easy. Please learn this easy technique and it'll serve you well in the future. Take care. See you next time.